Welcome to Learning English with Captain Binoy Varakil, Assistant Professor, Department of English, St. Joseph's College, Devgiri, Calicut, Kerala. We need to be inspired, we need to be motivated, and we seldom come across inspiring and motivating episodes. But the first year degree students of the UG programs of the University of Calicut, you are all lucky because almost all the selections in your A02 Ways with Words are written by persons who are really very motivating and inspiring if we look at the lives of those great writers as sources of inspiration. We have William Shakespeare, we have Somerset Maugham, John Keats, and a number of great writers in this collection, Ways with Words. Despite of all the misery, despite of all the problems, they tried their best to accomplish their dream. They tried to fulfill their purpose. They always worked hard to accomplish their dreams. They dedicated themselves to achieving what they really wanted to become. And one such great writer is John Keats. John Keats is a great poet, and so far as we young people are concerned, you young people are concerned, you must be inspired from this very great poet of world literature, because he is a poet, he is a great writer who is remembered for just a very short period of time he lived on this beautiful earth. He lived only 26 years, a very short span of time, but during this short span of 26 years, he made his life meaningful. He enriched the life of all the men and women in the world. Beautiful, meaningful, and of course, we have all reasons to speak about John Keats. Read the poetry of John Keats because his poems are excellent pieces of beauty. Now let's just look at the life of John Keats before we analyze the best poem he has ever written, that is of course Ode to Autumn. Ways with Words is the very course book we have to focus, we have to study, and in Ways with Words we come across this wonderful poem of John Keats, Ode to Autumn. We will discuss the poem. Before that, let us just look at the life of this great poet John Keats. As we all know, John Keats was born in 1795 as the son of Thomas Keats, a stable keeper, and his mother's name is Frances Keats. Keats was raised in Moorfields in London. He attended Clark's School in Enfield. In fact, Keats is of course a person who witnessed a lot of tragedy. And Keats has written about beauty and truth in life. How can somebody write about beauty and truth in our lives, in the world? Because Keats knew what is truth. Keats came across a lot of beautiful things and he wrote about truth and beauty. And he was of course one of the great writers of the world who witnessed a lot of misery. In fact, he has a lot of laws. I would say no one ever came across so much tragedies like John Keats. You and I have not witnessed such great volume of tragedy because his father, Thomas Keats, died when he was just 10 years. So his father died in the year 1805, and later his mother also passed away in 1810. When he was just 15 years. So he lost his father and mother at a very young age of 10 and 15. And he and his 3 siblings were looked after by his uncle Richard Abbey. And of course, life was very, very difficult for John Keats. So he lived his life. He was cared for by his uncle Richard Abbey. Now, realizing that his true vocation was writing, he gave up his apprenticeship to an apothecary in 1816. His parents wanted him to become an apothecary, a physician, a doctor, and he of course started training to become an apothecary. But he just gave up that because he knew that he was meant to be a writer. He wanted to be a writer, and he gave up apothecary or the training, his apprenticeship at the hospital of an apothecary. After being financially independent at the age of 21 with the inheritance of his grandparents, he published his first poem, O Solitude, in the year 1815. So his first poem is published in the year 1815, and later he writes a number of poems one by one. And another very wonderful poem, beautiful poem he wrote is On Looking into Chapman's Homer of 1816. Later he wrote another beautiful poem, that is Endymion. Endymion in the year 1818, and Endymion is the poem which begin with the beautiful lines, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. And everybody is quoting these lines, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. And he was of course not welcomed by many critics, contemporary critics, and he was of course this particular poem, Endymion, was criticized in Blackwood and Quarterly, the journal. Later there is another very important incident in the life of John Keats in the year 1818. He met his lover Fanny Browne, and he just wanted to be with her. Both of them were deeply in love, but it was of course an unfulfilled dream. He could not realize that dream. Okay, but this very company or the friendship or the love of his beloved Fanny Browne just inspired him to write a lot of beautiful poems, and he wrote lot of, to be very precise, he wrote more than 6 perfect odes in the year 1819, and a few of those beautiful odes Keats wrote are The Eve of St. Agnes, The Eve of St. Mark, La Bella Dame Sans Mercy, etc. He also wrote beautiful poems like Lamia I and Lamia II in 1819. And in December 1819, John realized that his fate too would be no different from his mother's and younger brother Tom's, who died in 1818. So his younger brother Tom died in 1818. So we have a series of deaths in the family. 1805, father passed away in an accident. 1810, his mother died. 1818, his younger brother Tom passed away. And 1820, John Keats' health is declining and it is deteriorating, and he right now moves to Rome, and it was of course very, very heartrending for him to go to Rome, because when he's going to Rome for better climate, but he has to leave Fanny Browne, his lover, and it was of course very painful for him. And now he goes to Rome thinking that his health would improve in a better climate, like a better climate in Rome. He goes to Rome, but unfortunately he passed away in 1821, and this is something very, very painful for a lot of friends of John Keats, who are of course poets themselves. And he was buried in Rome, and his friend Percy Bysshe Shelley, yet another great romantic poet, wrote a wonderful pastoral elegy mourning the death of John Keats, Shelley's friend. And the name of the poem is Adonais, Adonais, A-D-O-N-A-I-S. So Adonais is the poem written by Percy Bysshe Shelley on the death of John Keats in the year 1821. It is 1821, and this is in fact in the form of an elegy. This elegy is a lamentation on the death of John Keats. So, exam point of view, we have to remember who wrote a poem on the death of John Keats, and what is the name of that. That is of course Adonais, a pastoral elegy written by Percy Bysshe Shelley. And now we are just going to look at the important themes in the poetry of John Keats. And of course, when we think of the themes, we have to understand the fact that one of the major themes in the poems of Keats were the reciprocal concerns of the ephemeral nature of life, in contrast to the transcendence of art. Okay, so he is writing about, now that he has witnessed the death of his father, mother, and his brother, and he himself is undergoing so much of physical problems. He writes about the ephemeral nature of life. Ephemeral nature is the temporary nature of life. So our life is just, we are mortals, and death could be there any time. Like you read in the great Malayalam poet Ullur, Kalatthum Uchchikkum Andikkum Ravilum Kalandan Venmalu Kayyadade Ayadru Mulathil Aanyanju Vettunnunda Ayadu Hritspanda Vethyamakum. So these lines of Ullur is a clear assertion of the fact that there is death in our life. We can die any time. So this ephemeral, temporary aspect of nature is very, very powerfully represented in the poems of John Keats. So one of the major themes in the poetry of Keats is the ephemeral, temporary nature of life, in contrast to the transcendence of art. Art is transcendent. Art is eternal. Life is just temporary, but art is permanent. And this contradictory reality of the transcendence of art, the permanence of art, and the temporary nature of life is very, very vividly represented in the poetry of John Keats. So that is one of the themes. Another theme is, of course, a very close contrast between the imagined ideal versus the experienced real. This is again one. The imagined ideal, something that is just visualized, something that is just imagined, is the ideal, and the experienced is of course the reality. So the experienced reality and the imagined ideal is again another theme. That's why we come across these lines in the poem of Keats, Ode to Ordination End. Ordination End, we come across these lines like, heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. It is, okay, there is a limitation for all that is heard, but those unheard are, of course, limitless. We don't know, but we think that, yeah, this must be the perfect music, right? This must be the perfect melody. So he says, heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. So this is another theme of the poetry of John Keats, the experienced real and the imagined ideal. And other than that, Keats also writes about the sensuous beauty of nature, pagan, sensuous, celebration of the pagan people, right? Pagan people are heathen people who are worshipping nature. So these pagan people, they will be just adoring, worshipping and praising beauty in nature. So such kind of a pagan celebration of the sensuous beauty of nature we have in the poetry of John Keats, right? Sensuousness, right? That is, of course, appealing to our senses, that is sensuous beauty. And a wonderful example of this particular theme of pagan celebration of sensuous beauty of nature is the poem we are going to learn, that is Ode to Autumn. It's about beauty in nature, and the poet is looking at nature with so much of adoration, so much of worship, and he is praising the beauty in nature in a very, very profuse way. And we have the theme of the celebration of sensuous beauty in nature in the poetry of John Keats. And apart from that, of course, he deals with the romantic exploration of nature and its fierceness. Okay, so nature is very romantic. It gives us a lot of joy. It gives us a lot of feelings, right? It is just refreshing and rejuvenating and appealing to us. And that very appealing, refreshing, rejuvenating, wonderful, beautiful experience of, the poet is in all the poems of John Keats. So he writes about the romantic exploration of nature and its fierceness. Nature has also fierceness. There are some wild animals, some scenes from very, very powerful phenomena in the universe, in the environment, in nature are of course fierce, and this particular fierce aspect of nature is also very much explored in the poetry of John Keats. Right now, we can see that his poetry also deal with the different stages of life, because he has, as a person who witnessed the force of death during every stage of his life, Keats was preoccupied with the idea of mortality in most of his lyrics. Accordingly, he explains the inseparability of the opposites of pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow, life and death, and happiness and melancholy. Besides, Keats' poetry is celebrated for the mystical female figures of love, ambition, and poesy against the medieval chivalrous masculine world. So we have all these elements of celebration of the mystical female figures of love and ambition and poesy against, of course, the medieval chivalrous masculine world. So we have representative characters from medieval chivalrous world, wherein you see warriors, knights just going for a war. They encounter the enemy, they fight, and they come victorious. Sometimes, of course, these chivalrous people have difficult experiences, painful experiences, and all the aspect of the medieval romance or the medieval chivalrous masculine life is represented in some poems. Okay, I think we have some aspect of that chivalrous life in La Bella Dame Sans Mercy, another wonderful poem of John Keats. Okay, now we move forward to the kind of poetry that John Keats wrote. Say, he was of course a great romantic poet, and we are discussing Keats as a romantic poet. He was a great romantic poet, and Romanticism is a movement which is said to have begun with the publication of lyrical ballads of William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The initial anthology of Romantic movement was published in the year 1798, and later in 1800 we have the same anthology with a little bit of additions and a preface, and that is in the year 1800, and that is of course a word on the preface written by William Wordsworth is in fact a commentary on the romantic movement. And we understand that these poets, the romantic poet especially, William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, they are just protesting against classicism in their poetry. So 1798 is considered the year that inaugurated Romanticism, but the romantic strains were visible in the poetry of William Blake, who published poems decade before, and William Blake's Songs of Experience and Songs of Innocence are very good examples of romantic poetry. In those poems, in Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, we have of course poetry which have a lot of characteristics of the romantic poetry. And now we know that the romantic poets are generally critical of the Enlightenment, rationalism. The romantic revival shares with Enlightenment and intense focus on the powers of the human mind. Accordingly, self-division, solitude, subjective longing, all these aspects of the subjectivity are taken in the starting point and theme of many romantic writings. So, subjectivity is one of the themes of romantic poetry. Self-division, that is of course the poet or the person, an individual is divided between many emotions, many lives, and the maybe pain on one side and joy on the other side, happiness, melancholy. So this kind of self-division, solitude, and subjective longing, right? The desires of the poet we have in romantic poetry. So these people are very, very imaginative. They're just traveling in the wings of imagination. So the movement, that is of course the romantic movement, in its first phase was represented by Wordsworth, Coleridge and Southey, and in the latter phase was represented by anarchists like Lord Byron, Shelley and John Keats himself, right? So they just write about the wildness of nature, beauty in nature, fierce elements in nature. Another theme of the romantic poets is the loss of the individual self, loss of the individual, as well as the loss of the individual within the soul. Like as we grow up, we lose our individuality. Maybe as a boy we are happy, but as an adult we are not that happy. So this kind of loss of the individual within the self is again another theme of the romantic poetry. And of course the loss of the creative power of human imagination is again yet another theme in the poetry of the romantics, especially Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Now of course we are just going to look at the very poem Ode to Autumn, the structure and the theme of the poem Ode to Autumn. So it is in fact on 19th September 1819 that Ode to Autumn of John Keats is written, and according to the critics, this is in fact the greatest poem ever written. We have many critics writing about, rather praising the beauty of the poem, that is Ode to Autumn. And according to F.R. Lewis, this particular poem is about the Shakespearean theme of ripeness is all in King Lear. The King Lear, we have the theme of ripeness is all. So, according to F.R. Lewis, the poem is about the Shakespearean theme of ripeness is all in King Lear. The acceptance of death and rebirth by death is the theme of Ode to Autumn. So ripeness is all, and the acceptance of death is the theme of the Ode to Autumn, the poem. And it is also about rebirth by death. It's also about rebirth. The poem is also about rebirth. Now, described by Alan Tate, the greatest, another great critic of England is, of course, or another critic of the world is Alan Tate. So, described by Alan Tate as a nearly perfect piece of style, Ode to Autumn is an attempt to find beauty in the neglected, de-glamorized aspects of nature and life. Like Coleridge's Dejection and Ode, Keats on Melancholy. So this is one of the best poems about the neglected, de-glamorized aspects of nature. And we also understand that many other critics agree with Alan Tate and F.R. Lewis and Harold Bloom, etc., that this is one of the best small poems, lyric poems ever written, and we have the critical consensus about Ode celebrates it as a paean to the season of autumn, with its fruitfulness, its flowers, and the song of its swallows gathering for migration. The poem divided in 3 stanzas. Okay, this poem is written in 3 stanzas. In the first stanza, we have the representation of autumn season as a close friend of sun. Autumn season is the friend of sun, and that is the first first stanza. There are 3 stanzas, and this is of course written in the Iambic Pentameter, and in the second stanza we see autumn season as a female goddess, and in third stanza we have of course music of autumn, the kind of sounds and music we hear in the autumn season. And now, as we move forward discussing the poem, we understand that Keats is trying to find beauty in the autumn days. Autumn days are long days. We have more day than night, and John Keats is attempting to find beauty in the lengthening days, chilly weather. The weather is rather cool, so Keats is trying to find beauty in the long day, the cool weather of the day, and the brown fields. Entire fields are of course covered in brown colored leaves. So all that is described by Keats, and we have a lot of beautiful expressions, a lot of beautiful representations of nature. And the first stanza is addressing the autumn season as a close friend of the sun. The second stanza, of course, describes the autumn season as a female goddess, and the third is consoling us to, of course, listen to the beautiful music of nature, and the sensuous synesthetic imagery of each stanza is noted, and it makes one of the best poems. And Harold Bloom says it is in fact as closely to perfect as any shorter poem in English language. So according to Harold Bloom, this is a very perfect poem, and It is perfect, and no other short poem in English language is as beautiful as this poem, Ode to Autumn. And we are lucky to learn this wonderful poem, Ode to Autumn. Now we will listen to the poem, and afterwards we shall have an explanation of the beautiful poem, Ode to Autumn. Ode to Autumn, John Keats. Season of mist and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to laud and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatched eaves run, to bend with apple the moss cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plumb the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more, and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks a bard may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fumes of poppies, while they hooked spears the next swathe and all its twined flowers. Sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across the brook, or by cedar press with patient look thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch stubbled plains with rosy hue, then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river shallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lifts or dies, and full-grown lambs bleat from hilly barn, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the red-breast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. Now let's understand the poem Ode to Autumn of John Keats. We know that this is one of the best poems, and this particular poem, Ode to Autumn, is a paean to the autumn season. It's in fact a praise of the autumn season. And when we think of the seasons, rather autumn season, we have to think of the other seasons as well. And we have different seasons: winter, spring, summer, autumn. And winter is normally the season that opens or starts the year, and it is followed by spring. Spring is followed by summer, and last, of course, we have the autumn season. So the 365 days of the year is just divided in different seasons of winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And in that way, when we look at the year, the 365 days of the year, and when we just learn this particular poem, we have to understand the fact that autumn season is the season in which the year is rather mature. Winter is, of course, infancy, spring is childhood and boyhood days, and summer is youthful days and adult days, and autumn is old age. So that way we can just divide the 365 days of the year into 4 seasons. And when we look at the earth or nature, such a way we have to understand the fact that it is during old age or it is during the autumn season that we die or we have death in nature. So autumn season is a season of death, and we have the concept of life. And the romantics, as well as many people who believed in pantheism, they believe that we come from nature and we go to nature. Like, of course, we are part of God, and we come from God and we go to God. This is in fact a circle. It is cyclical process, and in this cyclical process we are born, we live our life here, and we just die. We go back to, of course, God again. So we have to understand the fact that, right, our life is, of course, an extension of divinity. We come from God, all right? Or rather, you can say that God is love, and we are born when our parents love each other. So life is, of course, an incarnation of divinity, or part of the aspect of God. All right, and we live our life, and we just grow up, and anytime we can die. Temporary nature of life. We can die anytime. Keats is writing about that because he witnessed the death of his father at 10 years, mother at 15 years, and his younger brother, of course, very soon when he was young, and he too died at the age of 26. And on his tomb is written, "Here lies one whose name is written on water." That's about the transience of life, transience of the life of the poet, transience of the life of everybody. So we have to understand that this poem is about death, it's about rebirth. When we are alive, death is with us. This moment, death is with me. It is with you. But you don't have to worry. If at all you die, you are born again. You are going to rebirth. There is rebirth. You are going to born again, be born again. So you don't have to worry. So this is the cycle of life. You are born, you live your life, you die, you again, you have life after death. So that very concept of rejuvenation and rebirth is in the poem Ode to Autumn. So 3 stanzas of Iambic Pentameter, and we have in fact a wonderful structure for this poem. And you have to understand the fact that every stanza we have 11 lines. So 3 into 11, 33 lines altogether. Perfect poem according to Harold Bloom. Harold Bloom says that Ode to Autumn is as perfect as any shorter poem in the English language. So let's look at the first stanza. First stanza is about the autumn season, and we have a lot of beautiful scenes from around. Autumn season as a painting we have in first stanza. Autumn season is presented as a close friend of the sun. Season of mist and mellow fruitfulness. Autumn season is season of mist, and it is of course a season of mellow fruitfulness. Mellow, mild. All the fruits are ripe, soft, very, very soft and full of juice in it. Close bosom friend of the maturing sun. So autumn season is again a close, intimate, bosom, heart friend of the maturing sun. And with fruit the vines, okay, that round the thatch eaves run. Everywhere you have fruits. And conspiring with him how to laud and bless. So your fruits all around, because the autumn season is conspiring with the sun, and it is because of the conspiracy or the intrigue of the autumn season and the sun that we have so much of fruits all around. So this is of course a reference to photosynthesis. So you have the sunlight on the green leaves, and it is just creating carbohydrates, or other, of course we have different types of vegetables and we have grains and fruits and all that we require. So season of mist and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun. Maturing sun, why? Because autumn season is the season that is at the end of the year of 365 days. Winter, spring, summer or autumn. Autumn is of course the sun is maturing because the year is going to end. The year is going to end. So maturing sun, conspiring with him how to laud and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatched eaves run. Vines, there are a lot of creepers. You have of course grape is of course a creeper, and many other creepers on which you have very sweet and mellow fruits. So all these creepers are spreading on the roofs of farmhouses and houses, and all the roofs are covered in fruits in autumn season too. And again, these two are conspiring. Autumn season is conspiring with the sun for what? To bend with apples the moss cottage trees. There are a number of trees, apple trees, pear trees, lot of fruit bearing trees, and all these trees are full of fruits just because of the conspiracy of the sun and the autumn season, and the branches of these trees are just drooping down, bending down because of the weight of the apple trees. Lot of apples, so the branches of these trees just bend. To bend with apples the moss cottage trees and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core. So they continue the conspiracy. Autumn season and the sun are conspiring, and all the fruits, apple fruits, pear fruits, berries, all the fruits is just full of ripeness to the core, to the center. Every part of the fruit is very mellow and mild to swell the gourd. You have a lot of gourds, like gourd refers to pumpkin, bitter gourd, ash gourd, okay, different types of vegetation, different types of fruits with outer hard gourd, and such gourds, all these gourd is again swelling, ripening, and plum the hazel shells, reference to nuts, badam nuts, hazelnuts, all these nuts, peanuts, right, okay, all this nut is again plum, very full, become full, plum the hazel shells with sweet kernel, and deep inside the nuts you have sweet nut, and it is very milky sweet, and the reference is to that. To set budding more. Now they continue. Autumn season and the sun are conspiring, and they are intriguing, plotting, and we have more buds to set budding more, and still more and more buds, more and more flowers. And when there are lots of tender buds and flowers, the bees are happy. The bees, honey bees, they can collect nectar and honey from the beautiful flowers, and there will be more warm days, there is going to be more sunlight, and bees can make a lot of honey, and for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. The summer, like the summer of the autumn season, has of course just overbrimmed the clammy cells. That is, clammy means moist. So we have beehives, so honeycombs, all these beehives are full of very moist honey, and bees are happy because we have so much of flowers and buds, and they think that summer is not going to end, and the beehives and honeycombs of the bees are just brimming up or overflowing with honey. Beauty of the first stanza, and we have to understand that the poem is noted for its sensuous synesthetic imagery. First we have a lot of visuals. Second stanza we have of course again sensory, we are tasting in the second, right? Third we listen to. So we have, right, something for the eye in stanza 1, something for the tongue in stanza 2, and something for the ear in of course, stanza 3. So we say that this poem is noted for the sensuousness and synesthetic imagery. Now we will move forward to the second stanza. Now in the second stanza, autumn season is presented as a female goddess, a beautiful young pagan goddess walking through the fields. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? So autumn season, you have the female goddess, fertility god, young lady with long hair, beautiful she is, and she is just walking in the middle of the stores. There are a lot of stores, right? Places, storehouses where you keep all the grain, all the fruit, all the vegetation, and you have the goddess of autumn, the female beautiful goddess walking. Everybody has seen her. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor. Where do you see the goddess? She's sitting careless on a granary floor. You know, granary is of course a house where you keep all the farm products. So on the floor of the granary floor, you can see this particular female goddess carelessly sitting. Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find. Whoever seeks abroad means if there is a tourist, if somebody is passing in the countryside of Europe, you will come across a female goddess, pagan goddess in the granary, on the granary floor in farms. Beautiful representation of autumn season as a female goddess. And how does she appear? Thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind. The wind is blowing, and the blowing wind is lifting the hair of the female goddess. Beautiful expression. Thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, blowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep. Sometimes you can see the female goddess asleep in a furrow. Furrow is of course a ditch in the paddy field or farm, the rice field, corn field. So she is sound asleep. How is she sound asleep? Because she was just reaping and reaping and reaping. She was just walking in the farms, and in the farm, amidst the grain, amidst the corn, the wheat, and of course the rice, there are some flowers. Especially there are poppy plants, and it is from the poppy flowers that opium is made, and the poppy flowers are letting out some kind of fume, some fragrance, some vapor, some kind of substance, very minute flakes or some substances. And these substances that come from the fragrance and the smell that come from the poppy flowers can drowse you. You become sleepy. You are intoxicated from the fragrance of the poppy flowers. Drowsed, sleepy, drowsed with the fume of poppies. Remember, it is from the poppy flowers we make the opium, the drug. Drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook. So autumn season has the scythe, the tool, the hook, and it is of course reaping. Autumn season, the goddess is reaping and harvesting, right? With thy hook spares the next swath and all its twine flowers. So we are reaping and reaping and reaping. As we reap, as this particular female goddess autumn season is reaping, she comes across, right, a bunch of plants on which we have flowers, and she doesn't reap it. She's just leaving it. There are flowers. Let it grow. Let the flowers become grains, or let there be fruits. Okay, so she doesn't cut it, and she spares, and now she moves forward, and you see her of course in another location. So in the farm you have of course twine flowers, intertwined flowers, one on other, intertwined flowers and plants and all. She doesn't cut those plants with flowers. Now And sometimes like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook. Who is a gleaner? A gleaner is a poor person, a poor man or a woman, often woman. You have the gleaner, Ruth in Holy Bible. So a gleaner is collecting all that is just left behind. Behind, grain is collected by the gleaner. So here, autumn season, the pagan goddess is collecting all the left behind grain, and she has a bunch of grain, and she is just keeping it a lot of grain. She has it on her head. So laden head, loaded head, and sometimes like a gleaner, thou does, like it is simile. The autumn season is compared to a gleaner, simile, figure of speech is simile. Gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook. Beautiful imagery. So you have a brook, a small stream, and the autumn season, like a female goddess, is crossing the brook with steady steps, because she is crossing the stream. She should not fall down, and she's walking across the brook very carefully. So you see her crossing the brook. Otherwise, or by a cedar press. You know, cedar is apple. Cedar press is a mill in which apple is, of course, pressed and juice, that is the apple wine, is made in a cedar press. So you can see this pagan goddess, autumn season, sitting beside a cedar press. And what is she doing there? With patient look, she's looking at the press, the valve, the tap of the press patiently. And what do you see? The watches, thou watches the last oozings hours by hours. And from inside the tank, okay, one by one, drop by drop, hours by hours, the wine drop, apple wine drop is just dripping down. And she's just watching it. So beautiful scene of autumn season as a female goddess in stanza number 2, and we see her, of course, number 1, just as on the granary floor, carelessly seated. Number 2, she is, of course, her hair is lifted by the wind. Number 3, she is, of course, sound asleep, drowsed by the poppy flowers in a furrow. Number 4, you can see her just reaping in the farm, and she does not reap those plants with flowers. Number 5, she is a gleaner and she is crossing the stream, that is number 6. And number 7, she is sitting beside the cider press watching the dropping of the apple juice. Beautiful imagery, beautiful scene, and we can also taste all this. We can taste the wine, we can taste, of course, the poppy, the smell. So this is, of course, sensuous images, synesthetic imagery in stanza number 2. Now we are moving to stanza number 3. The last stanza, the third stanza of Keats' poem, is representing, or it's a painting of noise or sound. It's a painting of the beautiful music of autumn season. Autumn season has also music, and the poet is successfully presenting the beauty or the melody or the beautiful music of autumn season in last stanza of the poem. Where are the songs of spring? Spring season is, of course, noted for songs, and now that it is autumn, so you don't have any songs of spring. So the poet is asking, where are the songs of spring? No, we don't have any spring songs, or rather we don't have any songs of the spring here. Where are the songs of spring? Where are they? I don't hear any songs now. I don't hear any songs of spring now. Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. Okay, all right, let's not think of autumn season. Let us, we, along with autumn season, let's not think of the spring, and let's not think of the music of spring. Autumn season has also music. And what are the music of autumn season? Where are they? Where are they? It's in kind of sad exclamation of the poet. Where are the songs of spring? No, we don't have to worry. Autumn season has its own music. Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day. A wonderful expression of the evening. The sunset, barred clouds. So you can look at the sky, and on the sky you can see barred clouds, stripped clouds, okay? Like a heap of hundreds of sheep, you have small stripped clouds on the horizon, on the sky, and the sky or the barred clouds bloom the soft dying day. So evening, now the day is dying, the year is dying, the day is dying, it's evening, and on the sky you see a lot of clouds, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. And now it's very interesting. You have, of course, the land here. This is, of course, the surface of the land. You have a lot of plants and trees and all that here. Okay, all right, trees here. All right, trees and all. And now you have, of course, the sky. The sky is here. A lot of clouds, and in the distance you can see the confluence of the sky with the plain or the land, and that is the reference, right? While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day and touch the stubble plains. Stubble plains refers to, okay, you reap the farm and you have the extreme bottom of the plants, like the paddy field, you have paddy or corn, you take the grain and the stubble is left. The extreme bottom of, right, the plant is the stubble, right, and that plain surface ground full of stubble is, right, you see the meeting of the sky and the earth in the distance. When you look into the distance in the horizon, you can see the meeting of the sky and the land, and it is referred to here in the poem. And touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Color is, of course, it's evening, and it is, the day is going to end, and you have a rosy color. All right, and this moment you have a lot of beautiful music. That is the music of autumn season. A wailful choir, the small gnats mourn among river shallows. Wailful choir. What is wailful? Yeah, mourning, lamenting, crying, because the day is dying, the day is ending, the year is ending, and you listen to gnats, G-N-A-T-S, G silent. Gnats are small flies, okay, which become very active in the evening, and you can see these gnats on the trees on riverbank or banks of streams and rivers. So, an evening, a wailful choir, the small gnats mourn among river shallows. River shallow, what is shallow? Shallow is a kind of willow tree, the branches of which just droop. So from amidst the thick green branches of the willow tree, small little creatures like gnats, flies are just crying among the river shallows. And what about the branches? Borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lifts or dies. Now the wind is blowing, and in the blowing wind, the branches of the shallows, willow trees lifted up. It is also just pushed down. So you have borne aloft, lifted up, and sinking down as the wind is blowing. That is, the blowing sound of the wind is again a music. The cry of the gnats, the wind's music. And besides that, it's evening is the time when all the animals just go eating very fast, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. So now you can listen to the bleating sound of lambs, full-grown lambs. You have sheep, and the young animal is known as lamb, and full-grown. Now slowly these lambs will become, of course, adult and mature. So these lambs are just bleating from hilly born. Hilly born refers to the borders of hills. So this is of course a countryside scene. You have a village, so you have a lot of farm. You have of course meadows, and these sheep, group of sheep, lambs, they just go scattering, eating and eating and eating all those tender butts of like grass and leaves, and maybe they just stray away from their older ones, mothers and all. So it's dark and it's going to be night and twilight. Okay, it's twilight. They don't see. Sometimes they don't see the mother sheep, and they're just bleating loudly. All right. So we have the music of autumn. That is of course the bleating sound of lambs. Hedge crickets sing. Now another music. You listen to the sound of the crickets. Yeah. Nighttime, of course, you can listen to the sound of the crickets, right? So the crickets also sing. Small creatures, nocturnal creatures, like a lot of crickets and all, very active, and their noise. Hedge crickets sing. And now with treble soft, the red breast whistles. It's evening again, and you can also listen to the treble soft song of red breast. Red breast is a bird, the chest of which is of course right, the bottom of the bird, small swallows, right. Red breast whistles from a garden croft. Garden croft is of course a small farm, and from a small farm, from the trees in the small farm, small birds, red breasts are whistling. That is again the music of the autumn season. And gathering swallows twitter in the sky is beautiful. Okay, evening, gathering swallows. All the swallows in the evening, they are just perched on the tree. They're going to sleep for some time. So before going to sleep, or from the trees, from the branches of the trees, these gathering swallows are twittering, making a lot of music, a lot of noise in the skies. So you see some swallows just fluttering and dancing and just beating their wings in the air, in the sky. They just move to the tree, go into the air, move to the tree, go into the air. Beautiful scene, and they are also just very happy and jubilant. And you listen to the songs of the swallows, gathering swallows who are gathering on the branches of the tree. So wonderful representation of the music of autumn in this particular stanza, the last stanza. Okay, and which are the music? Number one, we have the wind, the sound of the wind. Number two, we have of course the wailing choir of the gnats. Then of course we have the sound of the branches of the trees just beating or moving. And we also have the sound of lambs bleating. We have the sound of the crickets singing. We have the treble soft sound and song of the redbreast. And of course we have a beautiful twittering sound of the gathering swallows from garden croft or so small farm in the farm or garden. Okay, so with this we come to the end of the discussion of the poem. In the next session we go to the questions and discussion of the questions and answers. Now let's just sum up. So this poem, Ode to Autumn, is a paean to the season of autumn. The poet John Keats is wonderfully copying beauty of autumn. First stanza is about scenes from autumn season, nature, farms and gardens, beautifully ornated with fruits. That is of course the autumn season. Next stanza, second stanza, we have of course representation of autumn season as a pagan goddess. That is of course beautiful lady walking in the farms. Number three, music of the autumn season. Great poem of John Keats, Ode to Autumn. Next session, in another video, we will be discussing the questions and answers. Thanks a lot for listening. May God bless you all.